The first time I felt it, it was an accident. A misplaced hand, sharp inhale, a heartbeat so loud I was sure my husband would hear it from the next room. I was folding laundry in Jake's bedroom, my son's bedroom, when my fingers brushed against it. A hard ridge beneath the crumpled fabric of his sweatpants, left in the hamper. I shouldn't have picked them up. I definitely shouldn't have let my thumb press curiously along the seam, testing the weight. But I did. And when I realized what I was holding, my stomach dropped, because it wasn't just big, it was obscene. The kind of thing that made my cheeks burn, my breath hitch. The kind of thing a woman notices even when she tells herself she shouldn't. Even when that woman is his mother. Adopted, not by blood. A technicality that would later haunt me. I dropped the pants like they'd burned me, but the image stayed. Thick, heavy, straining against cotton. And worse, the shameful pulse between my own thighs, hot and insistent. That was the moment I should have walked away. I didn't. 3 nights later, I heard the shower running late. Steam curled under the bathroom door, and through the hiss of water I caught the sound of his voice. Low, frustrated, a muttered curse. I told myself I was just checking on him. That's what mothers do, right? The door was cracked just enough. Jake stood under the spray, head bowed, one broad palm braced against the tile, the other, God, wrapped around himself. Stroking. Slow then rough. His shoulders tensed, water sluicing down the hard lines of his back. And that, jutting, thick and flushed in his grip. So much more than what I'd felt through fabric. My lips parted. My knees trembled. Then he groaned, deep and ragged, and my nipples peeked under my silk robe. That was the second moment I should have left. Instead, my fingers crept to my own dampening flesh, mirroring his rhythm. Silent, hungry, guilty. The floor creaked. His head snapped up. Our eyes locked in the fogged mirror. Neither of us moved. Then his voice, rough with want. Mom. My name is Evelyn Hartwell, and by all outward appearances, I had the kind of life people envied. A sprawling Victorian home in upstate New York. A husband who was a respected cardiologist. And a social circle that included the kind of women who hosted charity galas and summered in the Hamptons. But beneath the polished veneer of my existence, there was an emptiness. A quiet, glaring ache that had settled into my bones over the years. Daniel, my husband, was a good man. At least that's what everyone said. He was disciplined, successful, and unfailingly polite. But marriage, I had learned, was not built on politeness. It was built on passion and hunger. On the kind of desperate need that made you forget the rest of the world existed. And Daniel, well, Daniel had stopped looking at me like that a long time ago. Our intimacy had become routine, predictable. Kiss on the forehead before bed. The occasional dutiful coupling that left me staring at the ceiling afterward, wondering if this was all there would ever be. I was 42, and I felt like my body was a museum piece, admired from a distance but never truly touched, never truly wanted. Then there was Jason. Jason wasn't ours by blood, but he might as well have been. We'd taken him in when he was 16 after his parents, Daniel's old college friends, died in a car accident. He was quiet at first. A brooding teenager with dark eyes and a sharp wit that emerged only when he felt safe. Over the years, he had grown into something extraordinary. And at 22, he was all lean muscle and quiet confidence. With a smile that could disarm even the most guarded person in the room. But lately, that confidence had faltered. It started with small things, lingering silences. The way he'd tense up when the conversation turned to dating. Then one evening, I walked past his half-open door and heard the unmistakable sound of frustration. Sharp exhale. The creak of his bed. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have. But curiosity has always been my weakness. The sight of him shirtless, his back muscles taut as he gripped himself in his hand, sent a jolt through me. Not just because he was beautiful, and God he was, but because of the way his brow furrowed in frustration. Why? He muttered under his breath. Why the hell is this so? He didn't finish the sentence. But I understood. Because there, in his grip, was the reason for his frustration. Jason was big. Not just big. Obscenely so. Heavy. The kind of size that made my throat go dry just looking at it. And yet, instead of pride, all I saw in his expression was insecurity. That was the moment something dangerous unfurled inside me. 'Cause I knew that if I walked in there, if I let my fingers trail over his shoulder and whispered, "Let me help you," he wouldn't say no. And God help me, I wanted to. Then one night everything shifted. It was a Thursday. Daniel was away on a business trip, something that happened more and more frequently. I'd stopped asking questions about where he really was a long time ago. Jason had been acting strange all week. Jumpy. Distracted. I assumed it was college stress. I was in the kitchen pouring myself a glass of wine when I heard the shower turn off upstairs. A few minutes later, Jason came down, dressed in sweatpants and a loose t-shirt. His hair still damp. He hesitated in the doorway like he wanted to say something. "You okay?" "Yes." He shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, just... Can I ask you something?" "Weird." Merc. "Weirder than the time you tried to convince me that eating cereal with orange juice was normal?" He didn't laugh. His fingers tapped against his thigh. Restless. "It's about girls. That kind of talk." I took a sip of wine, bracing myself. "Sure. What's up?" He exhaled sharply like he was forcing the words out. "I think I'm too big." I nearly choked. "What?" His face flushed. Not like that. I mean downstairs." For a second I didn't know how to react. This wasn't the usual teenage angst about size. This was the opposite. And he was telling me. Not Daniel. Not some college friend. Me. I set my wine down carefully. "Jason, that's not usually something guys complain about." He looked miserable. "It's not a joke. Hurts. Like, during stuff. Wah. I should have shut this down. Should have said, this isn't appropriate, let's find you a doctor." But I didn't. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the way his voice cracked. Raw and vulnerable. Or maybe it was the part of me that had been starving for any kind of attention, any spark of feeling. So I asked the question that would unravel everything. "Have you tried anything to make it easier?" His eyes flicked to mine, then away. I don't know what to do. And that's when I saw it. The fear underneath the embarrassment. He wasn't just some horny teenager bragging. He was genuinely scared. I should have walked away. I didn't. The air in the kitchen was thick. Not just with humidity but with something else. Something electric. Dangerous. Jason stood there, shifting his weight. His fingers still tapping nervously against his thigh. I could see the pulse in his throat. Rapid and fluttering. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. This is wrong. This is so wrong. But the wine had warmed my veins. And the loneliness of the last few years gnawed at me like a starving animal. Daniel hadn't touched me in months. Not really. Not in a way that mattered. And here was this boy. No, not a boy anymore, not really. Looking at me like I held the answers to something he couldn't even name. "Have you talked to anyone about this?" I asked carefully, gripping the edge of the counter behind me. Jason shook his head. His dark curls falling into his eyes. "Who would I talk? To your doctor? Therapist? Literally anyone but me." But he hadn't. He'd come to me. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. "Okay. Well, there are things you can do to make it easier." He frowned. "Like what?" He hesitated. This was already veering into dangerous territory, but the way he was looking at me, desperate, trusting, it undid something inside me. "Lube," I said bluntly. His cheeks darkened. "Yeah, I've tried that. Enough of it." He blinked. "I guess." I almost laughed. 'Cause it was absurd. Here I was, a 47-year-old woman giving my adopted son advice like that in the middle of the night. But underneath the absurdity was something else. Excitement. There was a forbidden charge in the air. I pushed off the counter. "Wait here." I walked to the hall closet, my heart hammering, and pulled out the small bottle I kept tucked behind the spare towel. Daniel hadn't touched it in years. I didn't even know why I still had it. Habit, maybe. When I turned back, Jason was still standing in the same spot, but his eyes were locked onto the bottle in my hand. "Here," I said, holding it out. He took it gingerly, his fingers brushing mine. The contact sent a jolt through me. "Thanks," he muttered. "I should have left it there. Should have said goodnight and gone upstairs. But I didn't. Do you know how to use it?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Jason's head snapped up. Idiot. Stupid. What are you doing?" But the damage was done. His gaze was locked onto mine now, dark and searching. I fumbled, my face burning. "If it's still not enough, you might need more." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then, quietly, "Show me." My breath caught. Oh no. But my body wasn't listening. Heat pooled low in my stomach, spreading like wildfire. "Jason, we can't. Please." His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. I don't know what to do. And that was it. The final crack in my resolve. I stepped closer, then closer still. His breath hitched as I reached out, my fingers trembling as they grazed his wrist. "Like this," I murmured, guiding his hand. His skin was warm. So warm. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was him. But suddenly there was no space left between us. His mouth crashed into mine, desperate and hungry, and I kissed him back. It was wrong. It was filthy. It was the most alive I'd felt in years. His hands were everywhere. My waist, my hips, my hair, pulling me against him with a strength that made my knees weak. I could feel him, all of him, pressed against me. And God, he hadn't been exaggerating. "Evelyn!" He gasped against my lips. Hearing my name on his tongue like that sent a shock through me. This wasn't just some drunken mistake. He wanted this, wanted me, and I wanted him. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Are you sure?" His answer was a groan as he lifted me onto the counter, knocking the wine glass to the floor. It shattered, but neither of us cared. What happened next was a blur of hands and lips and whispered curses. His touch was clumsy at first, eager but unsure, until I guided him, showing him exactly how to make me moan. And when he finally slid inside me, slow, so slow, because even with all that careful preparation, he was so much. Saw stars. It was wrong. It was perfect. It was the beginning of the end. The morning after was quiet. Too quiet. I woke before dawn, tangled in sheets that smelled like him, like sweat and cheap body wash. And something else, something unmistakably male. My body ached in places I'd forgotten could ache. A sweet, throbbing reminder of what we'd done. What I'd let happen. Jason was gone. The space beside me was cold. The pillow barely indented. If not for the soreness between my thighs, I might have convinced myself it was a dream. But it wasn't. I sat up slowly, wincing as the movement pulled at tender muscles. Sunlight crept through the blinds, painting stripes across the rumpled bed. Daniel's bed. The realization hit me like a slap. God, what have I done? I stumbled into the shower, scrubbing my skin raw, as if hot water and soap could erase the memory of Jason's hands on me. But the marks he'd left weren't the kind that washed away. Breakfast was a minefield. Jason was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, dressed for college. His backpack slung over one shoulder. He didn't look at me, just stared into his cereal bowl like it held the secrets of the universe. Cleared my throat. "Morning." His grip tightened on the spoon. "Yeah." Silence. Suffocating. I poured coffee I didn't want, my hands shaking. "About last night." "Don't." His voice was rough. "Just don't, okay?" I opened my mouth to argue, but the front door slammed. Daniel. Home early from his trip. "Honey." "Jason. You here?" Jason's head snapped up, his eyes wide with something like panic. For one horrible second I thought he might bolt. But then Daniel walked in, all smiles and airport stubble. And Jason's mask slid back into place. "Hey, Dad." The word twisted in my gut. Daniel ruffled Jason's hair like he was still a kid. "Missed you, sport. How's college?" "Fine." Jason shoveled cereal into his mouth, avoiding my gaze. "Gotta go. Late for practice." He was out the door before Daniel could ask why the hell the swim team practiced at 7 a.m. Daniel turned to me, grinning. "What's his deal?" Forced a laugh. "Teenager." He kissed my cheek, his lips dry and familiar. "You okay? You look tired. Tell him what happened last night." "Well, can't." It went through my head in a split second. "Just didn't sleep well," I murmured. The next week was torture. Jason avoided me, skipped dinners, stayed late at study groups. When we were forced to share air, he tensed like a cornered animal. His jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. I told myself it was for the best, that whatever madness had possessed us that night needed to stay buried. But then, on Thursday, Daniel left for another business trip, and Jason came home drunk. I found him on the back porch, a half-empty bottle of vodka dangling from his fingers. His eyes were glassy, his shirt rumpled. "What the hell?" I snatched the bottle. "You're 22. He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Yeah. And you're my mom." Guess we're both wrong. The word mom hung between us. Ugly and wrong. I sat beside him, the wood cold under my thighs. "We need to talk about this." "Why?" He turned to me, his breath warm with alcohol. "You regret it." It wasn't a question. I should have said yes, should have lied. But the truth spilled out instead. "I don't know what I regret." His gaze dropped to my mouth. "Liar." Then his hands were in my hair, his lips on mine. And God help me, I let him. This time was different. No hesitation, no guilt, just heat and hunger. And the slick, filthy sound of our bodies moving together on the porch swing after. As we lay tangled in the dark, he whispered the words that sealed our fate. "I can't stop. Neither can I." The lies piled up fast. Fake girls' names in Jason's phone for when Daniel got suspicious about his late nights. A new lock on our bedroom door. My bedroom door for when Daniel was home. But the cracks started showing. Jason's coach called about missed practices. Daniel frowned at the credit card bill. "Since when do you buy lure?" And once, I almost said his name in bed with Daniel. We were playing with fire. And fire always burns. The first time Daniel almost caught us, it was raining. Thunder rattled the windows as Jason pressed me against the pantry door. His mouth hot on my neck, his hands sliding under my sweater. We'd gotten reckless, desperate. The thrill of almost getting caught had become part of the addiction. But then, "Evelyn, you home?" Daniel's voice, closer than expected. "Too close." Jason froze. Our ragged breaths filled the silence. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. 1 second. Then, miraculously, the sound of Daniel's footsteps retreating upstairs. Jason exhaled shakily, his forehead dropping to my shoulder. "That's unfortunate. I should have taken it as a warning sign to stop. I didn't." 2 weeks later, the text came at 3:17 a.m. "Can't sleep. Come over." Jason's dorm room was a 30-minute drive from the house. Stupid risk. But I went anyway. Our date had been different that night. He'd been tougher, almost angry. He gripped my hands tightly. "You were with him tonight," he murmured. Daniel had taken me to lunch. A rare date. I didn't answer. Just arched against him, letting the guilt fuel the hunger. After, as I dressed in the dim blue light of his laptop screen, Jason said the words that would haunt me. "I love you." Not, "I love this." Not, "I want you." "Love you." I kissed him to avoid answering. Daniel found the receipt first. Hotel charge. One I hadn't made. "Who the hell is Jason taking to the Marriott?" he asked at dinner, sliding the paper across the table. Jason's fork clattered against his plate. Forced a laugh. "Probably some girl he's too embarrassed to bring home." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Look at him. Jason's face was sheet white. Beat of silence. Show me your phone, Daniel demanded. Jason bolted. The front door slammed. Tires screeched. And just like that, he was gone. Daniel turned to me, his voice eerily calm. You know something. Deny it. Do it now. But my mouth betrayed me. It's not what you think. His fist hit the table. What is it then? Came out in pieces. Shower. Kitchen. Porch. Daniel didn't yell. Didn't cry. Just sat there. His breathing ragged. Like I'd gutted him. When I finished, he said only 2 words. Get out. Jason's dorm was empty. His phone went straight to voicemail. Daniel changed the locks. And me. I drove to the motel where it all began. The same one from the receipt. And checked in alone. The bed smelled like bleach. The sheets were scratchy. I curled into myself and finally let the sobs come. This is how it ends. The divorce papers came on a Tuesday. Quiet, unannounced, like a final breath before silence. There was no knock at the door, no courier asking for a signature. Just a manila envelope, slipped under the chipped door of my motel room like some unceremonious farewell. Taped to the front was a single sheet of paper, no envelope, no pleasantries. Just a brief note clipped at the top, written in Daniel's unmistakable hand. Sign them. Never contact me again. 8 words. That's all. But somehow they struck harder than any fight we ever had. I held the paper for a moment, running my fingers along the ink. I could still recognize his handwriting anywhere. Neat, slanted slightly to the right, just like the man himself. Always precise. Always leaning into the future, even if it meant leaving people behind. The word never was underlined, and I saw where the pen had pressed so hard, it nearly tore the page. The N carved a jagged trench in the paper, a wound that mirrored the one forming in my chest. 15 years. 15 years of shared holidays, whispered apologies in the dark, and memories that clung like perfume on an old scarf. All of it now reduced to a legal document and a closing statement that could barely fill a single line. No courtroom. No mediation. No attempt to understand or be understood. Just an order to disappear from his life completely. Sign them. As if it were that simple. And maybe it was. Maybe there was nothing left to salvage. So I signed. What else was there to do? My energy had already shifted, focused entirely on finding Jason. But that too proved to be like chasing a ghost through fog. His dorm room was empty. Stripped of everything except a faint smell of cologne and the outline of posters once taped to the walls. The bed was neatly made, the desk bare. As if he had never lived there at all. I tried reaching out, texts, calls, emails. All unanswered. His social media accounts. Every trace wiped clean. The university offered nothing but a cold, generic response. Jason Thompson has officially withdrawn from classes due to personal circumstances. No elaboration. No forwarding address. No next of kin listed. Just a closed file and another door slammed shut. I stood outside his dorm building for a long time, hoping he'd turn the corner, that this would all make sense. But the world just kept moving, indifferent to my unraveling. 2 goodbyes in 1 week. One silent, one signed. And both of them left me more alone than I'd ever been. I drove for hours, retracing the fading edges of a life that once felt so familiar. I went to every place I thought he might be, clinging to memories like they were coordinates on a map. The old record store on 5th, his sanctuary. He used to spend hours there, flipping through dusty vinyl sleeves, eyes lighting up whenever he found a rare pressing or a band no one else had heard of. The place was nearly empty when I walked in, the same sleepy clerk behind the counter who gave me a half-hearted nod. I asked if he'd seen Jason. He hadn't. He said it had been weeks. Then I went to that dingy little diner on Oak, the one with peeling red booths and a jukebox that only played half the songs correctly. It's where we used to split milkshakes during that one carefree summer before everything got heavy. I sat at our old booth for a while, the one by the window. Ordered a vanilla shake out of habit, even though I couldn't stomach more than a sip. The waitress, maybe new, maybe just older now, didn't recognize his name. Finally, I drove to the park. That quiet corner by the old oak tree, where he once confessed, at 17, that he felt like a ghost in his own life. We'd been sitting on the swings, and he looked at me with hollow eyes, saying he didn't feel real anymore, like he was watching the world from the outside. I remember brushing his knuckles with mine, trying to anchor him back to earth. But that park was just as empty as the rest. No sign of him. Not even a footprint in the dirt. Just the rusted squeak of a swing swaying in the wind. And then there was the call. One missed call at 2:47 a.m. The same night Daniel kicked me out and the world as I knew it collapsed. I remember lying on the motel bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, my phone lighting up beside me. I was too numb to move, too broken to answer. That single call, never returned, became the last trace of him. There was a voicemail, just a few seconds long. I've listened to it more times than I can count. I hate you. His voice cracked as if the words hurt to say. Then a shaky breath. I hate that I still. And then nothing but a muffled sound. Could have been a sob. Or a hand over his mouth. Or silence swallowing the rest of what he couldn't say. It's all I have now. Broken message. An unfinished sentence. A boy disappearing into the spaces between memory and regret. Then the line went dead. No goodbye. No breath. No click. Just silence. Sudden and brutal like a guillotine. I sat there in the dim light of that motel room. Phone still pressed to my ear. Frozen in that moment as if the silence itself was speaking louder than anything he could have said. Played the call back. Again. And again. Until the words blurred together. Lost their edges. Lost their meaning. Until even his voice became something abstract. A sound, not a person. A memory unraveling. The world didn't stay quiet for long. First it was whispers. In grocery store aisles. PTA meetings. Church. People pretending not to look, pretending not to know. But their eyes lingered too long. Their smiles tightened around the edges. Then came the headlines. Blazing. Brutal. Unforgiving. Adopted son flees after alleged affair with mother. We weren't people anymore. We were a scandal. Punchline. Something sordid enough to gossip about over cocktails, to text about in group chats. We were the story told in hushed tones, just loud enough to be overheard. And none of them knew. They didn't know the sound of Jason's laugh when it caught him by surprise. They didn't know how Daniel used to hum when he thought no one was listening. Always in the shower, always off key. They didn't know the ache of what it felt like to love wrong, to love recklessly, to love and regret in the same breath. My sister was the only one who called. Jesus, Evelyn, she hissed into the phone like my name itself was offensive. Like just saying it burned her tongue. I tried to explain. I think I said, it wasn't. She cut me off. A stepson, Evelyn. And then she hung up. I changed my number that night. The motel bathtub was too shallow, too cramped for theatrics, but I sank into it anyway, curling my body beneath lukewarm water like it might somehow wash it all away. The bottle of wine balanced on the edge was nearly empty. I knocked it over without meaning to. Red pooling like blood, staining the water a pale pink. I stared at it, dazed. This is the way it should be, I thought. This kind of act deserves this kind of life. And then my phone buzzed. A single vibration. Single light. A Google alert I had forgotten I set. Back when I still checked for updates, still held on to hope. J. Hartwell, 23, arrested in Nevada for DUI. The bottle slipped from my hand and shattered against the tile. I didn't hesitate. I booked the first flight out and found him in a holding cell that smelled like piss and stale cigarettes. He looked like hell. Eyes sunken, lips chapped, a gauntness in his cheeks that hadn't been there before. His hoodie was torn at the sleeve, and on his arm, raw and angry, a fresh tattoo snaked upward in jagged black letters. Burn it down. When he saw me, something in his expression crumpled, like hope showing up in the wrong form. Why are you here? He asked, voice hoarse and small, as if disbelief tasted bitter. Shrugged. Because no one else is. He laughed, if you could call it that. It was a sharp crack thing. Me. Wow. How noble. I stepped closer, slowly, reaching out, instinct more than thought. He flinched. Don't, he said, venom lacing every syllable. You don't get to play mom now. The truth came slow, but when it landed, it was a knife between the ribs. Sharp. Unforgiving. I was never his mother. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. Not in the way he needed. Just a woman who crossed a line, who touched what wasn't hers to touch. I told myself it was love. That we were different. That what we had was something the world couldn't understand. But in the quiet corners of my mind, I knew better. In the end, all I could give him was cash. And a bus ticket. Mwe. Destination blank. I tried to tell him it wasn't punishment. Just freedom. Way out. A way forward. He didn't respond. At the station, when his name was called, he stood up without a word. No goodbye. No glance. Just one hand raised behind him, middle finger high like a flag on a sinking ship. That was our farewell. Crude, bitter, and too honest. The last proof that what we had wasn't love. Just a slow-motion disaster, finally reaching impact. Now I work nights at a 24-hour gas station off the I-8. The kind of place people don't notice unless they're desperate for fuel or caffeine. The uniform's cheap polyester. My name tag says Linda, a name I chose myself because hearing Evelyn feels like swallowing glass. She's dead now, buried in the wreckage. No more lipstick. No perfume. No designer heels or champagne nights. Just black coffee, humming neon, and a bathroom key on a cracked wooden stick. Most nights it's quiet. Desert wind pressing against the glass. Bugs swarming the lone floodlight. Silence loud enough to remember. And in that silence, I let myself slip. I remember the way Jason's breath would catch when I brushed my fingers against his neck. The way he used to glance over his shoulder, unsure if this was real. I remember Daniel too. How he proposed on a rainy Tuesday, soaking wet and laughing like a boy who didn't know the storm was already on its way. I hold on to those memories like bruises I press just to feel something. Then a diesel engine rumbles in. A tired man in a trucker hat asks for coffee. I smile, pour, pretend my hands don't tremble as I pass him the cup. And I ask myself, like I always do, was it worth it? But ruin doesn't wait for an answer. It doesn't care about regret. Doesn't ask for apologies. It just settles in, grows roots, and makes itself at home. And I let it. Thank you for staying with us. If you find it interesting and useful, please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.